You are listening to On The Wire, Racing TV's Irish racing podcast.
Cazoo Derby time, Cazoo Oaks time, and it is the first ever On The Wire podcast recorded without Lester Piggott being on this mortal coil. We're going to reflect with Danny Archer from the Racing TV digital team and Brendan Duke, who you will obviously know well, and myself, Johnny Ward, on the death of Lester Piggott later on in the show. I think we're all touched by greatness if we met the great man, and we all have a few stories to tell. But before all of that, we're going to look at the races at Epsom that he would have known so well, Lester, the Oaks and the Derby. We're going to hear from Joseph O'Brien, who I spoke to exclusively this morning. And then we're going to hear from Aidan O'Brien from the recent yard visit about his Derby prospects. But let us start by introducing the guests. Danny, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Johnny. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Are you going to Epsom?
Well, no, I used to live 10, 15 minutes away. So I was born, I could walk to the track, everything. But now I live about 10 minutes away in Leatherhead. But this is the first Derby I've ever missed. I've got to go to Paris, I've been told by the boss. So, 25 years, this is the first one I'm going to miss, which is a bit of a shame, but there we go.
What is the Derby like in terms of an experience for either the racegoer or the sort of casual racegoer who doesn't normally go racing?
I think for me, it's the uniqueness of it. I mean, I walk around there every 362 days of the year, and you can go where you want. It's just basically a massive downs where people are mainly walking their dogs or chatting to friends, whatever. And then for those 2 days, really, and even the build up, it just comes alive. And I think the uniqueness of it is not lost on the people of Epsom. Particularly the Oaks is a massive day for Epsom. Everyone goes. And then, of course, the Derby, you probably have people from more afar coming, but it's still, despite maybe in some years less crowds or less attendances, it's still got that luster within the community. I feel that people still want to go and embrace it.
Have you been, Dukey?
I've never been to the Derby, Johnny. No, that's one I need to tick off the box.
I'm in the same boat, and I it's kind of like one of those tracks where you nearly have to visit it. Like I'm thinking Downpatrick or a place like that. You have to visit it to appreciate its idiosyncrasies. And is it like that, Danny? Is it, we'll hear from Joseph O'Brien on the track, but is it actually like that? It is so unique.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you just look at the climb, first of all, when they break from the 12 furlong start. I mean, I think, isn't it, they climb as far as one of the skyscrapers in London. Then it's that sharp downhill down Tottenham Corner. And then I don't think people always understand how unique the camber is in that home straight. I mean, you see the amount of horses that do get unbalanced, but I don't think the cameras always do justice of just how unbalanced a horse can get and how much of, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but how it is really the ultimate test of the thoroughbred.
Yeah, actually, on that, Dukey, before we hear from your life in general, is it the ultimate test of the thoroughbred, or would you prefer to see a race, say, run at the Curragh, obviously both live on Racing TV, where effectively it's a fairer track and the best horse would win, because that's obviously not always the case at Epsom?
Yes, I would rather if the Derby was run at Newbury, but it's absolutely fine as it is. They're not going to change it, so I'm not going to worry about it. It's just a vicious stamina test. I mean, Danny was talking about that. I think you have to climb 40 meters from a standing start for the start of the race. I mean, that's just a cruel ask, and that's only at the start of the race, and then run downhill to finish it. It's a really tough track, and I suppose when you said the ultimate test of a thoroughbred, if you do pass that test, it's probably a good thing for the breed that those horses are the ones they breed from. So there's that argument, but I'd still prefer Newbury. Newbury, a lovely flat track, sweeping bends, just looks great,
Before we hear from Joseph O'Brien, Dukey, how have you been? You're back on an even keel, so to speak. You were at the Curragh last night, Leopardstown this evening. You're back where you belong.
Yeah. Well, I'm just at the moment, I'm a bit freaked out actually, because I'm looking at this screen and you're frozen, and myself and Danny are like, those strobe lights they have in nightclubs. A long time since I've been in a nightclub, and it's like you get that distorted movement. So this is completely baking me noodle altogether, but I'll soldier on. Great to be back racing. Lovely time in the Curragh last night. Very few people in it. Had a real industry feel about it, me being one of Leinster's leading racegoers. Ger Lyons nodded at me. Mr. FM Berry stopped for a chat. The sun was shining. I had an ice cream, so can't complain.
Yeah, and the aforementioned Epsom Berry is actually off to Epsom for coverage on Racing TV. But let's go now to Joseph O'Brien, fresh from his winning of one classic at the weekend. Is he going to win another? And I spoke to him earlier. Just to start, Joseph, obviously it's not the only classic run in the last week or so. You must have been delighted with how things transpired in France at the weekend.
Yeah, it was great. Above the curve won very nicely there. In Longchamp, she's a filly, had a good run in Chester, and it was great to get a second Group 1 of the year. And they're very hard to win, and she's an exciting filly going forward.
How good is she? And I know how Ryan Moore spoke after the race about just the size of her, which we saw previously in when she won her maiden at Leopardstown as well. But she is she a bit more improvement in her, I guess.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit of the reason why we went to France rather than Epsom as well, and I'd like to think that her best days are ahead of her, and but like I say, she's a Group 1 winner now, so everything is a bonus from here. But I do think that she's a filly that hopefully will get better as she gets older.
And she's by American Pharaoh. Have you many of them at home in the stables?
We don't have a lot of them, but we've been quite lucky with the ones that we've had. Particularly, we had another good filly called Pista a couple of years ago. So he's a sire that we've been very lucky with. But obviously, standing in America, we don't get a lot of them over here. But the ones that we've had, we've been lucky with. So hopefully we can get some more round up over the next few years.
Just before we talk about Epsom, is this the best bunch of horses you've had so far?
I don't know. I think we've started the year pretty well, Johnny. We've had plenty of stakes winners. We're probably ahead on stakes winners of any of our previous seasons, and so yeah, I think we have a nice bunch. And every year you're always trying to be stronger the next year than the previous year. But yeah, I think we've a nice team of horses, and we have the support of some great owners.
What are your early memories of Epsom?
Well, I suppose obviously the Epsom Derby is one of the biggest races of the year, if not the biggest race of the year, and the history, and just the track itself, and obviously I was lucky to attend the meeting since I was a young kid.
Do you remember your first race that you saw at Epsom?
Oh God, I can't say I do, but obviously Galileo is one that really stands out. I was probably around 8 or 9, I'd say, maybe at the time, and that was a special event,
I suppose one of my earliest memories going racing is Galway at the Galway Festival and all the razzmatazz. Like it must have been quite an experience for a young kid.
Absolutely, yeah, sure. Everyone, in the top hat and tails, and there's always a great buzz, and seeing the horses run all the way up the track and the camber on the straight, and the way they run down the hill. I really do think it's a unique track, and it's a unique experience to go racing there, and I strongly advise it to anyone who gets an opportunity to, particularly for this meeting, that it's somewhere that people really should go and really see for themselves.
Yeah, actually, how would it compare to the Melbourne Cup in that regard?
Well, it's a completely different really the feeling and the viewing there is very different, and I don't know if the viewing is like any other place, because you're nearly looking at the horses running straight at you up the track.
Yeah.
And it kind of climbs all the way up the hill, and you can see the camber obviously looking down the track. So I think it's a unique meeting.
So we'll get to your other Derby winner shortly, because it ties in with the Oaks, obviously. But Joseph, it's 10 years since Camelot won the Derby. How mad is that?
Yeah, it's scary, John, that it's so long ago. But I suppose it was a very special day, and yeah, it was a special day and a big meeting, a big day for myself in my career, and a special horse as well.
So that brings us on to Australia 2 years later. Australia is obviously the sire of Tranquil Lady. This is, for me, a fascinating horse, Joseph. Obviously, like, it's a race dominated in the betting anyway by the British horses. Your dad is bringing over a couple that ran in the Guineas. But Tranquil Lady, is it fair to say she's coming in a little bit under the radar?
Yeah, but I suppose she got beat in Navan, and then she came back up quick and she won in Naas. We really fancied her in Navan, to be honest. But she didn't didn't run badly, but didn't win. And then she was impressive in Naas. I think the bare form leaves her with a little bit to find still. I suppose that's the case for most of them in the race, but I do think she has to step up on the bare form. But I think she goes there with a live chance. She's earned a spot in the race, and I think the 12 furlongs will suit her. And really, all you can do is win your trial, and then you can step into the race and see how you get on. And that's what she's done. And hopefully, she's a filly that can at least acquit herself well.
And what's interesting for me as well is that State of Rest, the half brother, is basically the best horse to run in these parts by Star Spangled Banner. And you'd imagine that being by Australia, like surely she's going to stay at least a mile and a half.
Yeah, on paper, you would imagine so. She looked the last day like a mile and a half would be within her zone. Obviously, as you know, the real proof of the pudding is when they go and run. But I think all the signs are very positive that she would be at least as good, if not better, at 12 furlongs.
Is she better since Naas?
Yeah, she's trained very well. Very happy with her preparation. She's arrived over there and travelled over good. So yeah, we're looking forward to the race now.
What about Tom Marquand? Has he ridden much for you?
He hasn't rode a lot for us. The owners were keen to use Tom, and he's obviously a top rider. He obviously won the Ledger on Galileo Chrome for us a couple of years ago. I know Tom well for a long time, and he's a top rider. And she won't be lacking anything from the saddle anyway.
Did you get an invite to the Race and Royalty wedding then?
We'll see how we get on Friday, Johnny. First, that's we look at the short term before we go past that.
And also will give us the exclusive as well on his own wedding down the line, of course. Finally, what sort of chance would you give her?
Hopefully she has a live chance, Johnny. Like I say, she like I say, she's won her trial, earned a spot in the race. She has to step up to win it. And hopefully she can step up, and how far she does, we'll see tomorrow.
I did say finally, but of course I am going to ask you finally about the Derby. You're not represented in the race, the Cazoo Derby, but I mean, I'd say this is probably one of the races you'll have more interest in nearly than any other race that you haven't been involved in.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a big field, very competitive race. There's obviously a couple of horses who look as though they're the ones to beat. But it's a tough race, Johnny, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think there's going to be a bit of traffic and a bit of luck involved in getting a good run through the race. I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm sure you'd like to see Donica win it with Pisbadil if your dad doesn't.
Yeah, I'd love to see Donica win it. That'd be a dream case scenario. I think he has a live chance. The horses, his preparation has gone well, I'm sure, and having won Leopardstown, he's earned a spot in the race, and he has a live chance. Stone Age obviously looks one of the main contenders, and obviously Sir Michael Stout's horse, having won the Dante as well as he did, looks like he'll be tough to beat. So I think it's an open race. I think it's a good race, and I think it'll be a great race.
I don't know, Dukey. This man, just the team of horses he has at the moment, obviously above the curve was very impressive at the weekend, and I think he's a chance in the Oaks. Regardless, he's a strong team this year.
Yeah, again, we sung his praises on this show before, but his horses just accredited to him the way they're turned out and how relaxed they are. Yes, she must have a chance. I thought that looked a strong race in Naas before she won it. I kind of felt afterwards like it fell apart, but maybe I'm being a bit harsh on her. She was impressive.
10 years since Camelot, Danny. That is mad.
Jeez, that is a long time ago. 10 years. Well, you know, the Camelots, the Australias. I think the only criticism I probably have of the Derby in recent years, maybe they are a little bit, but I think the quality of the winner has been slightly critical. I mean, I saw Serpentine was gelded earlier in the week. Okay, Wings of Eagles maybe didn't get the chance to prolong his career, but I think that's the only thing which Dukey was saying. The luster of the race and the breeding side. I just think we need a superstar though in these two. Hopefully Desert Crown could be it, or maybe in the Oaks we've got the likes of Emily Upjohn. But I think both races could do with a superstar coming, like we had Snowfall last year.
Yeah, I think both races are really, really compelling in their own right. And Aidan O'Brien hasn't won a classic yet in Ireland or Britain this year. And the chances are he may struggle to win either of these. But let's start with our first video analysis. And this propelled Emily Upjohn to favouritism when she won the Musadora. She's obviously very likely race. And Dukey, you can talk us through this. For me, it's just what she finds here, because this wasn't quite as fluid maybe as her stablemates win in her prep, but it's what she finds from the 2 furlong pole.
Yes, very strong at the line. I mean, you could argue her head carriage is a little bit high, but you can't crib the way she's going away from these horses. And it was only her third career start. So that's probably been a bit harsh. My slight concern would be how fizzy she got before the race. Now, it didn't seem to affect her in this race, but just a bigger crowd maybe in Epsom. I'm guessing Danny would have to tell us what the crowd is like on Oaks Day. Maybe it's not a big crowd compared to York. Obviously gets a right crowd for that May meeting, but I just have a slight concern about her with the long walk down to the start, how she'll handle the preliminaries.
We'll just look as well at the Nashville's performance now last time, and you can talk about both these fillies, Danny. It was interesting to note that Emily Upjohn, she actually ran around a bit under pressure as well. She kind of edged left. This is a much, much smoother performance under Holly Doyle.
Yeah, I think, Nashwa's came into that win at Haydock in April, kind of unexposed, and then obviously picked up a 6.5 length win. On this occasion, it was impressive with the listed performance, can be a good trial for the race. But I just thought Nashwa, still the inexperience is a bit of a concern for me, and particularly the trip. Is she a definite stayer over this 1 mile 4? Okay, she was strong at the line here by Frankel, out of Princess Lulu. But for me, the stamina was the only slight concern I had. With Dukey's point on Emily Upjohn, you probably get 20,000 on Oaks Day. I think 36,000. It's sold out the Derby on Derby Day. So I think still the crowd can play a massive impact on Oaks Day, particularly on the inside of the course where you might get some of the paying public driving up in their cars and stuff. So it's an interesting one. Obviously, Frankie's a master at that, but he will have to really make sure that she's on her toes and doesn't get too worked up, because that walk all the way from the parade ring to that 12 furlong start is a long old walk, Johnny.
Yeah, that brings us on to far more serene place than Epsom, which is Naas, where Joseph O'Brien's filly won on her trial. And this is interesting to watch as well, because she was maybe expected to win at Navan. Dukey, she absolutely bolted up here, and she's so well bred as well in terms of stamina is practically assured, considering Son of Rest by Star Spangled Banner gets a mile and 2 very well. I really like this performance, Dukey.
Yes, I thought going into that race that it looked a really strong race with plenty of potential. And then afterwards, I was kind of like, well, did it fall asunder a bit? But that's only because she put them to the sword in such emphatic fashion. So that's probably a bit unfair. Yeah, she definitely has a chance.
Yeah, and the wild horse who was labouring in fourth there did actually run well since. And this VT is relevant to you, Danny, because you do fancy one of the also-rans from the Irish Guineas to come into it. Tell us about this now, because this is the Irish Guineas. I'm not sure about either of these, even though both of them, Tuesday was obviously second at the time and Concert Hall was staying on. Both of them are bred to stay.
Yeah, they are. I think the big thing for this, obviously, you've got your likely Coronation Stakes winner in front here. What a performance that was. But I like the way here, as the replay shows, Concert Hall doing all the best work at the end. Obviously, she's out of Was, who is an Oaks winner by Derby. But I just like the way, as they're coming up to the line, she is quite close to Tuesday and is staying on best of the rest. Okay, maybe she doesn't have the solidity of the form behind an Emily Upjohn. But I think given she's a guaranteed stayer, I think Aidan O'Brien's won, I think it's 6 of the last 10, or his record. Obviously, we know how many he's won in the past, but particularly the last few years, he's been dominant in this. And I think she might end up being the best of his quartet, I think, in this. I guess Ryan had to ride Tuesday, but the one I'd like to be on is Concert Hall. I just think over this extended trip, there could be more to come.
Some of you may remember a horse called Tuesday running in the Cheltenham Bumper, I think. I ended up owning a half-brother to him who was absolutely useless. This Tuesday isn't. Neither is Danny. Danny's going to give us his 1, 2, 3 for the Oaks.
Yeah, so as I said, I think Concert Hall makes plenty of appeal, I think, over the longer trip. I heed Dukey's concerns about Emily Upjohn, but just based on her form, she should have a massive shout. And I think with the Dettori factor, she has to go close, particularly if the ground, I think I've looked at the forecast, it looks it's going to dry out, but she wouldn't be too inconvenienced by good to soft. And then at a bigger price, I think a few other people have put her up, but Moon de Vega was unlucky behind Forts of June in the Cheshire Oaks last time out. And I just think there could be more to come from Rafe Beckett. He's been quite confident of a bold bid. And I think just at a bit of a price, I think 33 to 1, I'll have a go on Moon de Vega to finish third.
Beautiful trifecta there. Try to beat that, Juki.
Well, I will have a go at Nashwa to win the race. And again, I very much share Danny's concerns about the trip. The only thing I would say is if you're breeding a horse that's guaranteed to get the trip in the Derby/Oaks, then you're effectively breeding a national horse. So in this case, they have Frankel. They've gone with a pivotal mare. Frankel imparts a lot of stamina, and hopefully that'll be enough to overcome the pivotal mare. But they've sent her to Dubawi. Hopefully Dubawi can put enough speed into Concert Hall. I was just really impressed with Nashwa in Newbury. She was quite keen on comeback in Haydock, but I thought she settled a whole lot better in Newbury, put the race to bed in jig time. She hits the ground quite hard, but it looks Cooper always makes sure there's a bit of cut in the ground on the Friday because he doesn't want it too fast on the Saturday. So there will be a little bit of ease in the ground. And I'm hopeful that she'll stay. And I think she's a classy filly. Concert Hall, everything Danny said, and she's a lot of experience at this stage. That'll surely stand to her. And just from a tactical edge, I thought Thoughts of June. I didn't see a whole lot of competition for the lead, and was probably above the curve, should have won in Chester. She didn't get the greatest ride in the world. She's a weapon, that above the curve, and Thoughts of June still beat her. And if she gets loose on the lead, could be hard to peg back.
Very, very thoughtful from Juki there in terms of tactics as well. I'm going for Tranquil Lady. I just like her pedigree. I think she's definitely going to keep improving by Australia for this trip as well. And she's 14th with 4 each way places. Nashwa, as you see, she was very, very good the last year. I'm not sure she'll quite see it out. And Emily Upjohn, she might be a small bit less classy, but she'll be running on well into third. So Joseph O'Brien denying the Gosdens there. Let's go on to the Cazoo Derby, which is a feature on Saturday. And recently I visited the yard of Aidan O'Brien with a few other hacks. And even though he didn't have Luxembourg this year, who said would have been his main Derby horse, he did speak about the rest of them, pretty much all by Galileo.
Sure, listen, what can we say about Galileo that hasn't already been said? And like the way, obviously John and Michael owned them, and the way John managed them, and Michael, you know what I mean? They it's incredible, really, what he's done. And like what you said, you see there yesterday. They're all. If you see the horses in their trials, they run with their heads out and down.
You can rely on them.
Yeah, and as you push them, they get lower down to the ground. Very unusual thing, you know. If you see him, you know. Star of India's getting. He nearly starts crawling on the ground. He gets down. Yeah. Like he won't stop, but he'll keep going. And like most horses come up, but they don't. You know, they go down on their knees for you, which is very unusual,
If the Derby was tomorrow, who do you think Ryan would ride?
Oh, gee, listen, I would think he'd probably find it hard not to ride the horse from yesterday. Yeah. I think, but that won't be. Listen, we know the way that if they run, like the way they'll be ridden, change the guard, will go forward. He would suit the horse that ran yesterday. The horse that won the horse that won the 1.25 miles in Chester, he will go forward, but he's a little bit lazy, so he'll probably end up a little bit. And then the horse that won in Lingfield will go forward. He seemed to stay well because Charlie's horse went a good gallop there, didn't he? They went, he'll be forward. And then what else? So I'd imagine he'll find it hard not to ride him, but I don't know. Yeah, David,
If we sort of take out the scope for further improvement in these 3-year-old colts, would you think that Stone Age on paper has run the best trial of yours so far?
I suppose that Leopardstown was a bigger open galloping track, wasn't it? Where the horses in Chester were going around and turning, and it was a different test. But I suppose it would be hard not to be impressed with Stone Age yesterday. You would like to have something to have led him, which there was a horse that ran in Cork we thought would lead, but he didn't lead. So there was no point in messing him about, you know what I mean? So Ryan let him roll along, which was the right thing. But he's got the good thing about him. He's a lot of experience from 2, and he was always very happy to get leads at 2, and he was dropped in and he learnt a lot. So he would have learnt a lot at 2. We weren't kind of running him to teach him. If you know what I mean. He learnt a lot in a lot of those races.
Just briefly, Juki, what do you make of the Irish Challenge this year?
Oh, I think we've got a right chance. I think we're going to have a 1-2. Wow. So now this is a deep race, but I think we have some proper horses. I can only imagine I'll watch that VT after Jubilee. I can only imagine how excited Aidan is about Stone Age, because this horse is such an age project horse, isn't he? This will be his 8th start. Last year, he kept jumping the road in Leopardstown. He was too keen in Songclue. Brings him out, wins an egg and spoon race in Navan, but looks more professional, looked a really professional model in Leopardstown. He had basically, between Stone Age and changing of the guard, he looks to have the tactical control of this race. So I'd imagine he'll let one of them make the running, probably Stone Age. The horse is just coming to fruition. By Galileo will run through walls for you, and I just think he's primed for a massive effort on Saturday.
Well, we look at him very shortly, but let's start with the actual favourite, Desert Crown. Racing TV showing a feature this morning, Rishi Prasad with Sir Michael South. It's been a long time between drinks for Sir Michael South, but all of a sudden he has a son of Nathaniel who absolutely bolts up here, Danny, on just his second start.
Yeah, I think Sir Michael said there was a bit of a setback coming into this event as well. It was only 85% fit, I think was what he said to Racing TV after the race. And you can't really crab the performance given he wasn't fully fit. Okay, he does hang towards the stand-side rail in the closing stages, but there's not much to knock, but only 2 runs coming into the race. Again, Jukey's point with Emily Upjohn, is that a similar point you could make with Desert Crown? Could that inexperience cost him at Epsom? The only thing I do find with the race is there's not a single Group 1 winner in the Oaks or the Derby. So it's a huge opportunity, not just to win a classic, but obviously to win a Group 1 and, of course, for Richard Kingscote. How will he handle the pressure? Okay, he's already ridden big race winners, but this is obviously a huge chance for him as well. But the inexperience on this occasion makes me temper the enthusiasm.
Yeah, but inexperience is a negative, whereas unexposed is a positive. So it's kind of like it depends on your attitude towards race. Stone Age, Jukey, you've been accused of a few Stone Age opinions in your time, but this Stone Age, let's look at the VT of him at Leopardstown, because his profile is completely different to the favourite.
Very much so, and he didn't jump the road today. If we'd shown his 2 previous runs in Leopardstown, down the back straight, there's a car path, and he jumped that, but he didn't have any of that caper. Really knuckles down under pressure here and puts some serious distance between a big rake and stride on him. He's a powerful horse. Yeah, I mean, what's not to like? I mean, I suppose the favourite, of course, does look a potential star. So, but Stone Age, he seems almost certain to run well to me.
Yeah, we speak about horse from the past. I remember a horse called Changing of the Guard, trained by Aidan O'Brien, winning the Ulster Derby. I think he was by Monju. This is a different Changing of the Guard. And this since this performance at Dundalk, he obviously won at Chester, but it wasn't dissimilar. And again, he was a late developer, Jukey. This horse came on. This form has actually worked out well. He obviously did it even better again than Chester since. And for me, he's probably going to go out in front, Jukey.
Possibly they'll work that out between themselves and Stone Age, and unless one of the other horses diverts in terms of tactics, they should be able to decide it between themselves. Yeah, a very likable horse, has had 5 runs, so relatively experienced, and of course Aidan, first time cheek pieces, he's just a master when he puts the headgear on, so respect it.
Very interesting aspect of the race. And finally, on you, on this one, Danny, and this is Pisbadil. I always go back to this horse's maiden win at Killarney. I had a tip for Pisbadil and I had a tip for Buckaroo in the same race. It just goes to show how amazingly strong these maidens can be. Obviously, he didn't look like he was going to win this race for nearly all of it, but what about his attitude here on the rail?
Yeah, showed a brilliant attitude. Obviously, just getting the better of Buckaroo, who I guess has let the form down slightly.
Any concerns about that?
I think the general form, Johnny, I mean, Duke de Cesar hasn't really shown it this year. Bluegrass back and forth. I guess Aidan O'Brien just ran him in the Dante because he had nothing else. I'm a bit disappointed for Gavin Ryan, who hasn't got the ride, but obviously Frankie's on board. It was a good effort. The attitude, you'd probably say, should stay the trip, and a huge opportunity for Donica. But I think, like Jukey, I think for me, changing of the guard is a bit relentless. And if he could get bowling out in front, he could then maybe set it up for a Stone Age. I think that's where it could lie, depending if Aidan decides to go with Changing of the Guard or Star of India prominent. But I wouldn't write off Pisbadil, but I think of the Irish Challenge, I'm more convinced by Aidan's trio.
It's interesting just in that yard visit, Danny, as well. He you know, they were like, oh, you must have been devastated when you saw Luxembourg lame in the morning. He's like, whatever, it is what it is. Like, it's, you know, why would you get worked up about it? It almost felt like he's seen so much at this stage that it's like, okay, it's a horse, I can get over this.
And at the end of the day, Johnny, you probably know more than me, but I remember when I was growing up, like the See the Stars, when he ran 7 or 8 to try and get that horse beat. He only relies on this. I think this is quite a small but select team. A few are going to the French Derby and elsewhere. And I think with Stone Age, I think he does think he's got a serious prospect who can step into the void left by Luxembourg. So for me, I'm not massively concerned. It's obviously a massive shame that Luxembourg's not there, but I think Stone Age can fill the boots.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing the race is missing is Luxembourg. I think because Luxembourg would be a horse that would very much divide people. He'd have to step up and trip. He was very, very eye-catching in the Guineas, but he'd probably be a short enough price. He's not here. We have a different favourite. Danny, let's get your 1, 2, 3.
I'm really sweet on Stone Age. I think he's pretty tough to get away from. He gave Aidan that 15th win in the Leopardstown Derby trial. Okay, only High Chaparral and Galileo have done it this year, this century in the Derby, but I just think he's got a perfect makeup. He was doing all his best work at the finish, and that turn of foot could be important. And I think if they decide to lead with changing of the guard, he might be able to set it up for his stable companion. And Desert Crown, despite his inexperience, he's clearly got an engine and plenty of talent, but he can only finish third, I think, behind an Aidan O'Brien 1-2.
Nice prices, Juki.
Well, my selection to win the race is none other than Pigbadale. Absolutely love this horse. You mentioned how tenacious he is under pressure. He's got a head carriage to die for. I would have rather he'd had another run this season. He's only had 3 starts, but we're getting a double figure price. And I really rate that form in Leopardstown. Now, you would have to say that Buckaroo was the unlucky horse in the race because it was a complete dawdle and he sat last. So he was definitely at a tactical disadvantage. But I put it to you, Johnny Ward, that so was Pigbadale. Again, as we mentioned earlier, you can never be sure that a horse will stay. But I'm absolutely sure this horse will stay. He's going to love the trip. He's going to get a good gallop to run at. He'd be able to sit in the box seat. I very much perhaps I'm just a little bit more militant than Danny when it comes to these things, but I'm delighted that the Tory's riding him because he gives him a better chance of winning than if Gavin Ryan was riding him. So we want the Tory on the horse. We get that. He's going to get a good ride tactically. I think he'll find loads for pressure. He'll definitely improve for the step up and trip. And as for the Buckaroo form, I mean, Buckaroo was really impressive the next day in the Curragh, and that form was well advertised in the Irish Guineas. So it was just a too bad to be true performance from Buckaroo in the Irish Guineas. They off a slow pace, they put 4 lengths between themselves and the third. I think this Pigbadale, he's got a huge chance. And as mentioned, for the second and third, Stone Age must run well, and Desert Crown has to be respected. I just feel like he's a little bit short in what looks a very competitive race to me.
This might be a stupid question, but have you read Ulysses, Juki?
No, I haven't. I haven't read any of that stuff. And there's another one, Finnegan's Wake, which is the one that starts and ends with the same sentence.
Oh, well, I know Ulysses is the same day, but I'm not sure.
I
would have thought you would have been a nice kind of scholar.
No. I can't do any. I don't deal well with broken narratives. Well, unless Tarantino does it, but I'm not sure that James Joyce could pull it off.
Yeah, Danny, you haven't been to Juki's house. I've called on occasion. He's situated very, very near the James Joyce Museum in Dublin by an old Napoleonic era tower. A man who knows the good things in life, Juki.
Oh yeah. No. Great time of the year to be around at the moment. I've got some good sea swimming in. Yeah, no. It's a lovely part of the world around here. Yeah.
It is indeed. My 1, 2, 3 in the Derby. I'm going to go with Desert Crown. I think he just might have something about him. I love the way he did it. He's Nathaniel, should improve again. Change of the guard. I think he'll hold on for second place. And Walk of Stars, who I think is probably a bit better than that run at Lingfield the last day, and he's a big price. So fascinating Derby. I think, as I said, I think the only thing we're missing is Luxembourg, and obviously you'll be able to watch this on Racing TV and watch all the races across the 2 days. On Epsom, from Epsom rather, on Racing TV. One person who very, very sadly will not be watching is the late great Lester Piggott. Juki, I met him in the Curragh changing room a few years ago and went up to him, and Tracy Piggott, his daughter, was there, and I had like a phone in my hands, and obviously I was teeing it up, but I said, Lester, would you mind taking a photo of me and Tracy? And he dealt with it so well. He was so cool. He came just slinked into the press room, really chilled out. Little did I know I was in the company of the greatness that passed away at the weekend.
Oh, you didn't recognize him, or it was just for fans that you asked him to take the picture?
So no, it was for bands. The
Okay.
being that he didn't act like a great man. He was just very laid back, and you completely missed my point there. He passed away. Pay a tribute to the great man.
Pay a tribute to the great man. Yeah, well, he had a good line in acerbic wit, so I'm surprised he didn't have something to come back at you with there. But but the tribute I would pay to him is I have fond memories of him because I remember, was it 1990 that he won the Breeders' Cup Mile for
Royal Academy?
Royal Academy. So I remember being in the Curragh on his comeback. I think he came back in England, but he came over to the Curragh one day, and Vincent O'Brien had a rake ride. I think he rode 4 winners there that day, and I was 13, so you're still at that age, you think your dad's a god. And
obviously you were not placing bets at the Curragh
not placing bets at the Curragh, but at my age it was. But so in 13 you still think your dad's a god at this stage. His hero was Lester Piggott. He goes and he rides 4 winners, and I was struck by how much love there was in the place from, because he sort of, his career, a lot of his career was around a time when Anglo-Irish relations weren't particularly good, but he was much loved. In fact, a guy told me, I don't know how true this was, that there was a priest in Ireland somewhere, and when he'd be doing the prayers of the faithful, or whatever section they do that in, and we'd like to pray for the victims of British injustice, the Guildford 4, the Birmingham 6, and Lester Piggott, because this was the time he was in prison after all the tax trouble. And I met another guy then, and he said to me, yeah, it's an absolute disgrace the way that they're treating him. Like, he was in jail for tax evasion. It was perfectly legitimate, but he was there. Yeah, but Ken Dodd didn't get prison, and that's because he's the Queen Mother's favourite comedian, So the Irish had Leicester's back all the way.
They absolutely did, Danny. And the story goes, he asked Willie Carson for the lend of a tenner. No sign of the tenner 2 weeks later, so Willie Carson implored him to give it back, to which Lester replied, what are you saying? I haven't even spent it yet. He was a great man.
Yeah, the Longfellow knows some great stories, I think, been out through the week. But I think the other thing as well is he kind of not just transcended racing, but also, popular culture. Okay, there was the prison sentence, but I think there was, there was song written about him. I think Van Morrison, there was lyrics in a song about him. James mentioned him. But I think also, for me, it's the international. He was successful in Canada, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, Singapore, and he even won a derby in 1993 in Slovakia, along with the United States. I think he kind of, to be able to transcend a sport where we can be a bit inward looking, he was someone who really stood out. And yeah, it's very sad news, but Maureen and Tracy continue to live on his legacy.
Very much so. Let's look back before we conclude the show on the memory of Leicester's great days. And Juki, you can take the beat here.
The minstrel. This is the rat-a-tat-tat finish. You wouldn't get away with this day in this day and age. But he's basically lifted him home. And I mean, that's Willie Carson on the inside, isn't it? So 2 very strong men in the saddle, but he's somehow just by force of will. You know the way these sportsmen, when Danny was talking about, they transcend the sport, and it's kind of like you have this feeling of inevitability when they're in their pomp that he's just going to get it home, and he lifted.
Yeah, 45 years ago. I wonder, was that the day that Willie gave Leicester the tenner? Probably not. 45 years later, we have a brilliant Oaks, brilliant derby on the way. Danny, thanks a million for coming on.
No, thanks very much, guys, and enjoy the action this weekend.
I think he's made a good debut, Juki.
Oh yeah, very polished, very polished. He was a great asset to the team.
Polished man finished off there, Juki, who somehow hasn't read Ulysses, which was the biggest prize loser on the show today for me. We'll talk to you soon.
Have you read it?
What is that, Juki? I actually haven't. I haven't read Ulysses.
Oh.
I have the book, though. That's the important thing. I can show it off to people when they, here's Ulysses. Obviously, I haven't actually read it.
Oh, well, I have a story for you if you want it, and it involves your hot. Are we still on?
We are indeed.
This woman is probably not watching the show, but this is a Galway woman, a county woman of yours, who has disgraced herself, basically. I'm down in Galway next weekend. So I was looking at accommodation. You just can't get accommodation in this country. I was looking at 400 quid for the 2 nights. So I said, I'll get on to Airbnb and see if I can do it a little bit cheaper. And lo and behold, I got it for a juice for the 2 nights in Salt Hill, so I can get a sea swim. I'm 1.5 kilometers from town. Is that right?
Yeah, that'd be all right.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you know the way you have to go through all this guff where you have to send them something to say, oh, yeah. So I said, hello, Roisin, in town for the weekend. Hopefully you can accommodate me. Just some generic rubbish. And they were, bear in mind, before I tell you this tale, that I have been reviewed numerous times on Airbnb. It all says the same thing, quiet guy, no trouble, yada, yada, yada. So Roisin gets back to me. She says, hi, Brendan. You'll be very welcome to stay. We are a quiet family home with pets who like a quiet night. I assume it's the pets that like the quiet night, but maybe they'll. So hopefully that suits you. Hopefully that suits your needs. If there's anything you need for your stay, let me know, Roisin. So I get back to her. Jolly decent of you. I'm basically house trained, so should be grand. See you then. Now I know that if you're explaining a joke, it's a terrible joke, but like that's obviously a reference to the pets, right? I mean, I didn't get your Leicester joke anyway, but anyway. So she gets back to me. Hi, Brendan. I'm not sure if you're kidding. I assume you are. We would certainly like to think that our guests would be a little more than house trained. We don't want any trouble. That's all. Just basic common decency. Since it's our family home, you see. I mean, this woman is just a fans-free zone, isn't she? I'm going down to stay with her next weekend.
Sorry. Oh, I actually like that story. That story has hashtag no context whatsoever in relation to either the show itself or the closing of the show, unless you can tell me there was a context.
No. You can just edit it out. I thought the show was finished. But what I'm saying to you,
I don't think we should. I think we should leave that in. So let's finish off with you, Juki.
What are we saying about the people of Galway? I mean, it's a small sample size, I'll grant you, but she's disgraced the county, hasn't she?
We are the coolest place in the world to ever go, and if you have seen this footage, it has made it into the final edit, and I think we should. It's stretched the show out to some bizarre analogy about the house trained Juki who hasn't read Ulysses. Thanks very much for watching and listening, and enjoy the Derby and the Oaks.
You are listening to On the Wire, Racing TV's Irish racing podcast.